Okay, in this video I'm going to show you how to gradually change the speed of the motor using a programming structure called a for loop. So we're going to set up the motor exactly the same way as it was before. The two pins controlling the direction of the motor are pins 12 and 13, and the pin which is controlling the speed of the motor is pin 10, same as you can see in that picture in front of you. So once again, in the setup we'll need to go pin mode of pin 13 as an output, and copy and paste that, copy, paste, and pin 13 is also an output. Notice when we're only using pin 10 for speed control, we don't need to configure it as an output, because as soon as we use the analog write to pin 10, that will automatically configure that pin as an output pin. So once we get into here, I'm going to define a variable. So it means I'm going to go back up to the top of the program, and I'm going to define an integer variable. So I go int for integer, and I'm just going to use n. And I could go n equals 0, and that would define n and give it an initial value of 0, or I could just define n, which probably still gives it an initial value of 0 actually. Okay, because I want to use it down here. So I want to repeat something a number of times, so I'm going to go like this, for, and then I'm going to go n equals 1, that's the starting value of n, put a semicolon, n, we're going to keep repeating this loop as long as n is less than, whoops, we need a less than sign, n is less than 25, another semicolon, and I'm going to go a funny thing which is n plus plus. I'll explain that in a minute, but that's the start of our for loop. And then I'm going to open a bracket, and whatever I put inside this set of brackets is going to be repeated a certain number of times. Well, it's going to be repeated about 25 times. So what happens is n is a counter. When I go through this block of code the first time, n is equal to 1, and when I finish doing the block of code, n goes up to 2, and it goes through the block of code again, and every time it goes through the block of code it increases n by 1. That's what the n plus plus means. It means increase n by 1 every time you go through the block of code, and you're just going to keep continuing going through the block of code as long as n remains less than 25. And as soon as n gets equal to 25, it's going to say, okay, we've done that enough times, and it's stopped repeating it. So this thing called a for loop is useful when you want to repeat something and you know how many times you want to repeat it. Okay, so what we're going to do now is we're going to go analog write, and we're going to write to pin 10, and the number that we're going to put in there happens to be 10 times n. Okay, semicolon at the end of that line. So that's going to change the speed of the motor. So the first time through, n is going to have a value of 1, so the value we're sticking in the analog write command will be 10 times 1, which is 10. Second time through, n will have a value of 2, and so the value that goes into the analog write is 10 times 2, which is 20. So as we go round and round this loop, the value that's going into the analog write command is going to go 10, 20, 30, 40, 50. And when we get through to the 25th time through, the value that's going to the analog command will be 10 times 25, which is 250, which is about full speed for the motor. So this, by the time we've gone through this loop, 25 times, we'll have taken the motor up to full speed. I'm going to leave the motor running at each of these speeds for a little while, maybe for about half a second. So here I'm going to go delay 500. Now I'm going to go through the loop about 25 times, and each time I go through the loop I'm going to waste about half a second with that delay. So it's going to take me about 12 seconds to build the motor up to its full speed. But that's it. We've built the motor up from speed of 0 up to full speed. Of course, when it goes around the loop the second time, it's going to take in straight back down to 1 and build it up to full speed again.